Here we are once again in the lovely 4:3 ratio frame. Because man, I gotta talk about this movie. I want to get my opinion out there. Yes, it's another vlog. Deal with it. But many things going on in my life, it's difficult to juggle vaulting and stuff. And I do these because, one, I like talking about movies, and I don't want that to go away from me, and just show that I'm alive. So anyway, let me just cut to the chase. Last night, I saw Suicide Squad. Yes, the most highly anticipated movie of the summer, next to Barry Sonnenfeld's 9 Lives. I can just imagine that movie tanking so easily. It's weird because we've come a long way, and usually August is like the dead slot for like summer movies, and it seems to be getting a little better. 2 years ago, we had Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was a smash hit, which is weird because eons ago in the 1980s, a little movie called Howard the Duck premiered in August, and that didn't do so well. It seems like the oracle of life is changing. Now, anything that's in August is actually going to be a decent hit, which makes me a little more excited for The Founder. But no, there's a really funny story to talk about going into this movie. I saw it last night. It was a Thursday screening, and I had my friend Dan with me. And if you don't know him, you might have seen him before on a couple of vaulting episodes. And he was also with me when we saw Guardians of the Galaxy, ironically enough. And I asked him, would you be interested in seeing this or Sausage Party, which comes out next week? He was like, you know what, I can't say I'm not interested. I think I'll, give Suicide Squad a shot. And I was actually really surprised, because normally he's not really big on comic book movies. The only times I take him to say said comic book movie are the comedies, because he's really more into, the comedic kind of ones. Deadpool, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's ironic because they're all Marvel. He hasn't seen Ant-Man yet, though I'm curious whether I should introduce him that one. But no, when it comes to superhero movies, it's just basic action, rough and tough in his point of view. And I always try, whenever I go to see one of those kind of comic book movies, I try to make sure it's ones that he can kind of stomach. Because he has like certain genres and tastes that appeal to his taste buds, so to speak. But then there's like one or two serious movies we've seen in our past, but yeah. So I was shocked, and I was like, "Whoa, you really want to see this one? Are you sure? I know that Sausage Party's next week." And he's like, I don't know. That looks a little too dark for my taste. This one looks like it could be fun. So we go and see it. It's a packed crowd. Once in a while, there's a laugh. There was like maybe twice, 1/3 of the place applauded. Okay. And I remember, walking out with him when the end credits appeared, and I asked, "So, what'd you think?" And he just gave me that look of uncertainty that, I don't have much taste in movies, but how do I say this kind of look? And the only thing that came out of his mouth was, "When's Sausage Party coming out again?" Truth be told, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase, because he has a little of the same opinion that I have, even though he's not familiar with comic book movies too much. But all in all, this film is just really okay. It's not good, it's not bad, it's average. But after seeing Batman vs. Superman, a majority of the dull films we had this year in the summer, really dull films, I would rather take this over anything else I've seen this summer in terms of dullness. And when I mean dullness, I mean Alice the Looking Glass, Warcraft, Independence Day, Resurgence, Ghostbusters, for crying out loud. Those movies really tried to make a mark. They really tried to make a name for themselves, but it was either the case where the story was just too stupid for its own good, there was no really needed purpose for these movies to exist, or they didn't really have enough breathing room. It's pretty much the same problems I've had with a couple other films. So, in terms of Suicide Squad, at least it's trying to be entertaining. At least there were entertaining scenes. At least there were points in this movie where I could get so easily engaged to it. If it was on television, it just popped into this little scene. So for what it is, and just combine those factors in, it's a step above, but it's not really saying much. I haven't read the comic. So it was the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, where I didn't read the comics either. But at least I could have a sense of familiarity with the characters, because there's stuff that is easy to connect to in Guardians. It's quintessentially live-action Futurama, in a sense. And with Futurama, it's the everyday people that have, weird, strange quirks. And even though if they're in the future sees itself as a normal, everyday occurrence, or else the occasional TV viewer, they're amazed because they're going to different planets and stuff like that. And that was essentially the same feeling I got with Guardians. Because you could really connect these people and their problems and their situations and the fact that they're low lives that really can't stand their low selves. And with Suicide Squad, there were points where they really tried to get that across. I'll try not to spoil too much, don't worry. There were points where they did try to get that across in certain scenes. This is one I can talk about a little bit because it's in the trailer. There's a scene where near the end of the movie they just go to a bar and they kick back and they have a couple of drinks and they talk about, some of their origins in a sense and why they're in this heap, why they are these people. And to me, it really felt like that Batman animated series episode almost had them, where you see the villains just the Batman's villains just sort of kicking back, talking about stories and stuff, and just being themselves. Because it showed that there is a side of humanity to these baddies, that at least they can connect with one another and just act like regular, normal people when they're not trying to take over the world or something stupid like that. But the dialogue, the delivery, the execution of that sequence alone made it so worth it. Because they're just literally talking about their problems. They're talking about each other and why they're misfits and they don't fit in, and you could really relate to and see why they're like this. And I wish there was really more of that. I really wish there was. This is the biggest problem with the movie. The pacing, the storytelling of the whole film is so hampered that you're really thrown into a loop and you don't know what it's trying to do and you don't really have a sense of care. The first 20 minutes alone is just a big Wikipedia text of these villains. There's a scene where this governess is going in and telling these generals at a restaurant, I have this elite team of villains in this prison and I think it'd be great if we, use them to go after these super villainous tasks that no other mere mortal can obtain because they're villains, they have ultimate power, and we capture them, and they could be great to our will, and we can enforce the rule that if they don't obey, we can kill them. Which, okay, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. But it just doesn't seem like they really put that through across, because they're only up against one task, and I'll say that for later. But in the first 20 minutes, they are literally going down the list and saying, oh, this is this character, and he has this and this and this and this and this, he likes this, oh, and this is this. I want to see them in action. And that is how we learn about them. We see them in their environment, and from the tip of the hat, we know exactly who they are just by how they act and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't like Watchmen, where you immediately got this, set of stats and stuff, this is how many kills Rorschach had, and this is who Night Owl is dating, and blah, 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 blah. This movie, on the other hand, is really talking down to its audience a little too much at times. And that is one problem I had with this film. There are points where it really doesn't know if it wants its audience to be familiar with the characters off the fly, or just simply learn about them along on the journey. And the one I like the most is the last one. I like to see them in action, because later on we get to have a sense of their character, who they are, by their own quirks and performance. And I think the stronger element would just be to axe that scene alone where she's going down the line of who they got in their possession and everything, and just rearrange the footage so it's like in a montage or something. Because there are points they do go into the backstory of these characters, which are actually pretty interesting. There's one that Will Smith plays called Deadshot. And again, I don't know these characters well, aside from Killer Croc, Harley Quinn. I think that's sadly about it. But it seems like this film was more emphasized on saying, we're going to play it safe, instead of just, taking all these risks factors. And there's certain spots where I felt like they were taking risks, but not fully enough. This movie felt very limited in its delivery, very scaled back. And I'm not trying to be hard on it because I did enjoy spots of it. I really did. But there's points where they're trying to enforce who these characters are, who we're supposed to be rooting for, and then when we get to the actual villain, spoiler alert, well actually no, I'm not going to spoil too much, but you get the idea. When we get to the actual villain, there's really nothing interesting. It sort of just appears, and it's like, okay, this is a bad guy, so we have to treat it like a bad guy, and that's what the movie is saying to us. It's saying we have to treat these supervillains as sympathetic, tragic beings, and then you have one that's like the ultra villain of the bunch, and we have to see it like the ultra villain of the bunch. And even though they give us reasons why this one would want to take over the world per se, there's not really much of a driving motive to it. It just sort of happens. And again, I want to go deep into it, but people are going to be seeing this movie, excuse me, and I don't want to ruin it. If you think that the Joker is the main baddie, he's not. I'm going to say right now, if you're expecting the Joker to be the main villain of the whole thing, which would have been awesome, by the way, don't know if it's accurate to the comics or not, probably isn't, but if Jared Leto's Joker was the main baddie of the whole movie, I think it would have been more interesting. It would have been perfect, because the little glimpses that we get of this character really felt like that there's something that could have been there. He could have captured them all and tried to make them go on to his side of anarchy and everything. It would have been perfect. No, what's his side story? He wants to get with Harley Quinn. It's in the trailer. I can ruin it. Man, oh man. I don't like Jared Leto's appearance. It just felt really weird. Even from the trailers, I was a little put off by it. The weird metal brace face mouth, all the tattoos and stuff. He's a very punked out gangster, which is what they're obviously going with. Which is not a bad idea, but it just seemed a little strange of a choice. And it's funny because I like the performance that Jared Leto gives. It's clear that he's really channeling the Joker. I wasn't a fan of the makeup or the look of this Joker in particular, but I will give it this much: Leto is actually not that bad. He's no Jack Nicholson, he's no Heath Ledger, but at least he can carry that manic energy, that very distortion of it. But at the same time, he's not very memorable. He's just there. It's sort of an extended cameo in a sense. His only purpose is to just go after his girlfriend that's in this group, and that's really it. And it's a shame because there was so much promise when you hear all the stories of Jared Leto causing these problems on set, being manic and everything, and he's only there for 10 or 15 minutes. I heard there's more scenes, which are probably going to be in the Blu-ray and DVD, and it's funny because there are spots where I do feel like this was chopped down a little too much. I know I complained about certain movies previously to this one where it wasn't giving enough, or it should have gave enough. With Batman vs. Superman, as an example, there is an Ultimate Edition that's 3 hours long, and I remember seeing that version more recently, and I just kept thinking to myself, okay, these are great ideas, these are great elements, but then 38 minutes in, I sort of gave up, and I said I can make my own version. And so I literally took the digital copy I got of Batman vs. Superman, the longer version, and cut down a good 50 minutes and had a more linear structure. And I think in the case of Suicide Squad, it was a moment where they had a lot of material filmed, and they just sort of clobbed it together and tried to make something out of it. I heard there's two versions. I heard there's one the director, did, which is more somber, and then there's one the studio did, Warner Brothers, which is more audience-friendly with nice logos and everything. And I guess somewhere down the line, after the fiasco of Affleck and Harvey Keitel going up against each other, being a brooding mess at the box office, I guess they wanted a compromise to see if there was some way they could actually hybrid the two together. And it really shows in certain spots, even in the editing. There's spots during the opening sequence where we're being introduced to the characters, they have all these weird colors and everything when they transition into the other scenes, which was really off-putting. Even the bits where, again, when they're introducing the characters, and you see these stats and bios appear right next to them, that was a weird choice. I don't need to know these things. Let us know about these elements during the journey. Again, I like that aspect where we learn about the people as the story goes along, not right at the spot like it's some sort of big writer's Bible and they have to connect these characters because they like this thing and that thing. Don't do that, please. The only times when this movie was interesting to me was when these characters were together and when they're playing off each other. I felt that is the stronger element of this film. Even though there's 7 of them, and it's a little hard to keep track at times who is the bigger and bulkier of the two, but when you have that many people in a group trying to save the plot, per se, not the plot, sorry, the problem of the day, sorry, it's sort of tough because you're trying to give enough screen time for certain people. There are these 2 characters, Killer Croc and Katana, who look amazing, costume design, and they have some interesting background traits, but I really didn't feel like there was much of them. There's so much devotion towards Will Smith's Deadshot, who's good, by the way, who's actually in his prime, and not to mention Margaret as Harley Quinn there, who is really channeling the cartoon the energy of the cartoon character from the animated series. And they do a good job, fine, but then there's points where it's like, okay, that's good, but I want to know more about these people. I want to know more why you got Captain Boomerang in there if he's really technically useless. I want to know about more and more and more of this and this and this, and it doesn't really give that much, because there's so much it's balancing on its shoulders. It's introducing new characters, it's trying to somehow incorporate them in a story that's, feasible to work with, it's trying to be audience-friendly. There's just so much being juggled that either all the balls that said person is juggling is either going to... Let me explain this a little better. Sorry about this. This movie feels like a juggling act with fiery chainsaws. And every fiery chainsaw is a problem. And sure enough, at some point, when there is something that doesn't work, that chainsaw drops. So either when you're watching this, movie per se, there's either going to be 1 or 2 chainsaws dropped that you're going to think to yourself, oh, man, that's not going to work, or pretty much the whole lot is going to drop down. Because this movie, Suicide Squad, it's really trying so hard to appease its audience. And I can't say it didn't. Critics are surprisingly giving it a good thrashing. Viewers, on the other hand, are surprisingly fighting back. There's petitions and stuff to take down Rotten Tomatoes and, oh, don't be biased and stuff like that. As a casual viewer and someone who's seen a lot of films over the summer, I can safely say that I would take this any day if it was on television, but that's not saying a lot. This movie still has problems. The editing is just such a chaotic mess. The villain is just there and not very interesting, and it sort of plays off like the original Ghostbusters. It legitimately does. Without giving too much away, there's this whole supernatural thing that's trying to take over the town and take over the world, per se. I guess it's opening this portal or something. I can't really say too much. I can't even spoil it either because it doesn't give us too much of a thing. It just sort of happens. It acts as something for our characters to go in and stop, and that's really all it exists. It's just a plot point to give a purpose and a care, and that's really all it is. Which is a shame because I would have liked a more superfluous villain. I would have liked something, more intriguing to care about. And even if they do, with this whole concept they have with this witch character, which I can't go too much into detail of, it's a neat idea where they go with it in the first half, but then it jumps back and it's like, okay, we have that settled. Now let's go from Vincent and Gozer and Zool and jump over here to the leads we're supposed to care about and just plod along and try to find a plot. And that's really what the movie is. It has some really nice ideas, there are some good action scenes, but overall, it feels a little incoherent. Like very, very incoherent. And it's a shame because I want DC Comics to at least break the mold a little bit. I like Marvel movies, don't get me wrong, but I think it's time that we did see something from another place. I don't want to be the one on the planet that says Marvel is the king of it all, they know how to make adaptations. And yeah, I haven't seen a movie that Marvel did that's not good, but DC, my goodness, they're trying. At this point, they're literally on crutches, I bet you right now. After what happened to Batman vs. Superman, I'm at least glad to see they're still pulling through and saying, we know it's going to work, we won't know until we try, and that seems to be the emphasis they're going with. Last week, they had The Killing Joke released, and that was... oh my goodness. I should have made a whole video about that one, actually, the more I think about it. Even that wasn't promised. Even that didn't help. It was The Killing Joke. Oh, good God, what did they do? And then this week, Suicide Squad. I hope Suicide Squad is good. It better be, man, or otherwise it's the end of the DC universe as we know it. What? Justice League movie? No, let's hope that's good. Which, by the way, I have not seen a trailer for Justice League yet, and I'm holding off on doing so because I want to see how it looks on the big screen. I've heard good things about it, but that's as far as I'm going to go. But jumping back a little, Killing Joke had potential. It had material to work with, but I think it didn't know where to expand itself and where to branch off. At least with Suicide Squad, it had a lot more to work with, but I can't say it ended perfectly in the end. It's more like an effort where at least they tried to do something, but everything that came together just sort of... a good fraction of it pretty much blew up in your face, or at least appreciate something that blew up on your face. Because there are some good things that go into, like the relationship of Harley Quinn and the Joker. There's a quintessential scene that really does show a little of the origin that's very nicely done. And again, it's a case where it's like, okay, this is how the characters were, so it shows a sign of them being faithful. Give me more of that. I want to see more of these kind of things. But no, it's like, we gotta establish a franchise, we gotta make a story here. There's just so much meander that I really don't know whether to say it's good plotting or bad plotting. But the stuff I liked. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it's a mess that could have been fixed in the editing bay. If they had so much material to work with, maybe they should have compromised a tad more and made a more coherent feature, so that way we'd be introduced to these characters better, and we would have a sense of care for our giant, ultra-powerful villain. I'm going to say right now, if you're going to see this movie just for Jared Leto, you're going to be really disappointed. I already explained why earlier, and trust me, heed my warning. It's an extended cameo, nothing more, nothing less. If you just cut his scenes out, it wouldn't change a thing. And that's really all I got for it. It's not the worst. I wasn't really too on the fence about anything at all, aside from storytelling purposes and pacing reasons and editing, which was a little degrading. But if it was one of those movies that was just on television, I'd watch it again, just for the sake of it. Because at least it was trying to be entertaining, at least it was trying to be a good popcorn movie, unlike some of the others I've seen this summer, so I'll give it that much. Just, on the whole, judge for yourself, man. Just judge for yourself. I think that's really all I got for it. It's really not a bad movie, I just wish it was better. But when I compare it to all the other summer films I've seen, it's like, you know what, this is not a bad one on the deck. There's been weaker this year. And to be honest, I'd rather take this over the weaker stuff any day. So yeah, those are my 2 cents. Next week we got Sausage Party, woohoo, and Pete's Dragon. So be there, man. is going to be messy. Oh yeah. Screw this bit. I'm just gonna turn it off.